of course, Cabaret. Then the probably seminal Liza moment for me was in 2008. I saw Liza's at the Palace on Broadway. And obviously there was a rich history behind there with her mother at the Palace. But what was incredible was that Liza at the time had just had hip surgery. And there was big question. She had just gotten out of the marriage to the guy who everybody was happy was dead. And it was like, can she still sing? Can she still dance? Can she still walk? It was a big question. So I will never forget, everything was like hushed and everybody was waiting. And the spotlight comes on, she comes out, and she does one of her signature Liza moves with her hips and her outstretched hand. And the audience lost its mind in a way I have never seen ever, before or after. I mean, I've seen, Rolling Stones and McCartney and David Bowie, some of the greatest performers, and there were people standing on the Broadway seats to give a heartier standing ovation. There was grown men and women with tears down there. And I remember saying, my God, this woman has a hold on people that goes way beyond. I like her music, I like her songs, I like her movies. There's something really, really profound here. So in a couple of years back, when Dana Craig, our co-producer, was a big Liza fan, we keep a list. We did Carl Icahn, the billionaire, corporate raider. We did, Meatloaf in 2008, which was a fun one. And so we always keep this list. And we had this list of people, and when we started talking to her and her team, they said the magic words, which you never hear as a documentarian, which is, by the way, Liza just found 25 hours of never before seen footage in the 1970s. I guess you maybe want to see it. So the real seminal kind of moment in the project was, they sent us some clips, and we brought in people who were from multi-generations into the office. We hit play, and literally our jaws dropped. We could not believe she was the it girl. Okay, this was, Taylor Swift is probably the only one who you can connect to at the time. And I think not everybody can remember how unbelievable it was that she was on the cover of Time and Newsweek the same week. And that was literally presidents and popes only, not performance artists. So the talent, the vulnerability, the personality, the singing chops, the dancing chops, we couldn't believe it. So when we went back to Liza and her team and we said, look, we think there's a film in here talking about, at that point we talked about when Liza became Liza after the death of her mother. At that point is when it all gelled, and that was the long story of how the project came about, but part of it is making sure that the filmmaker has a reason to make the film.
Right.
And that's the backstory.
So how did you find her when you did the interviews and when you were speaking with her? Was she completely with it? Was she happy to be involved with this? Was she at all nervous?
Well, that's the amazing thing. When we showed her the Kay Thompson footage at the top of the interview, and she said, "Thanks for showing this to me. It relaxes me because I'm nervous." I almost fell out of my seat. Maybe we were trying to think of the crew, like, has she done 100,000 interviews in her life? How many has she done? And she's nervous, but that kind of starts getting you into the heart of Liza. And I think one of the proudest things we are about the film is that what you see is what you get. That is the experience of being with Liza in the room. She's quirky, she's kooky, she's funny, she loves humor. If you make one joke, if you make her laugh once, she's your friend for life. And she has I think one of the ways I describe it is she is this really unusual concoction of incredible strength, fortitude. Obviously, when she belts out a song, you see that strength comes out. and yet the fear and the vulnerability, it's all in there, and it's very rare to see that in that combination in a person. And she's also just the sweetest person, and she really is. I was gonna actually cut out or not make a whole section about her and her friends, because I figured, oh, everyone says, oh, she's a good friend, but she really, we talked to like hundreds of people, off camera, and the stories they told about her, because it fits into that genuine need for her to want you to love her. And it's an unbelievable thing. I mean, when you meet somebody like her, a legend, your natural instinct is, oh my God, I loved you in Cabaret, I love all your music, I love the thing. And it's so unnerving for her to kind of lean in and say, now tell me about you. And at first you think, oh, she's just doing lip service, and what does she give a shit, whatever. And then she kind of leans in. It's like, no. Now Aunt Myrtle lives where? And then you realize after a while she's actually interested in what you're saying, because she wants the connection with you. She wants you to love her. She wants you to be her friend. Again, this is so unnerving, but it's really Liza, and that I think makes her, very extraordinary personality.
Right. And what made you decide to sort of focus the movie on these different, I guess, mentors or influences in her life? When did you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big hair-pulling out moment, but essentially, I kind of have a rule with everything that we do that, and it sounds very pretentious, but I actually do it, which is letting the material speak to me. And what happened was we looked at all this footage of her from the 70s, from the 80s, and so many times she said, oh, he invented me. Oh, she invented me, which is a very, very odd turn of phrase, which is why we remembered it. So the first time I sat down with her, one of the first questions after she yelled at the crew and she didn't like the lights and all that stuff, I said, now Fred Ebb, and she said, oh, Freddie invented me. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off, that she really was the product of this enormous raw talent that after the death of her mother, kind of, she sought out these mentors. And I do agree actually with what she said from everything that we've heard, which is that she does have this talent for picking people. I mean, we all have had, or many of us have had mentors and everything like that, but she wanted to learn dance, so Bob Fosse was her mentor. She didn't like her fashion, so Halston was her mentor. I mean, at some point, it's not just random that these people connected with her.
Right. And then in terms of getting the people who participated and gave you interviews, was that easy? Was it a long process?
No, I mean, I think, one of the things, except for one or two people in it, I kind of made the rule that anybody in this film had to know her really, really well. So as an example, Alan and Arlene Lazar, the dentist who unfortunately passed last year, but everybody kept saying, like me, we would talk to all these people who'd be like, you talk to Alan and Arlene, right? And just for a little weird twist, I got off the plane this morning at LAX and I hear somebody say, Bruce, and it was Arlene Lazar and her daughter, the one who was with Liza in front of the Christmas tree.
Oh my gosh.
It was just totally random. For sheriff, whatever you want to call it.
Wow.
Right. And then you had Cheetah Rivera, who also passed away just pretty recently.
It was pretty obvious who we wanted to talk to. I mean, I was actually floored because I knew Mia and Liza were friends. I did not know they went to nursery school together. I did not know that Mia had this whole relationship with Judy. I mean, they grew up together, and apparently, I mean, there were so many stories. I mean,
yes, they were, both children of Hollywood, at the same time. Actually, they're almost the same age, I think.
Yeah, and Liza used to go over Mia's house for like a sleepover, and Judy, when she needed something, whatever, she would call Mia, "Where the hell is Liza? Send her home," or whatever. I mean, they're just these amazing stories that are just,
right.
You can't believe it. But they really do have that bond. They still talk to each other regularly.
Right. Was there anybody that you kind of hoped to get that didn't pan out?
No, there was nobody who we really, really wanted to get. At one point, we wanted to get Meryl Streep. The timing didn't work out or whatever. Why did I want to get Meryl Streep? I wanted to get Meryl Streep because if you listen to Meryl Streep, she said this many times. She was a acting student at Yale, and she went down to Broadway to see Liza. I think it was at Carnegie Hall. This was around 74, so she was just a student, maybe 73. And she said that it changed her life. And the reason is that she was learning at Yale all the nuances of acting and the subtleties that you can do with acting. And when she saw Liza, she had a light bulb go out where she realized that you could simultaneously have all of that inner life, but you could also be entertaining and project. And because Liza has both of that. She has the acting, but also she can give you a nice song and dance along the way. Right. And that was apparently for Meryl a very, very seminal moment. So at one point we were going to, but then it didn't really fit in our story because, in a sense, Liza was Meryl's mentor at that point.
So what do you think? It's interesting that you mentioned Meryl Streep, who has managed to keep a career going as an actor and a star. She's in her 70s now and still doing it. But in Liza's time, it was harder for women, wasn't it, to sustain a career in film?
Well, it was harder for Liza, and this is, people often ask me, like, what's the big revelation? What did you learn the most from about this? And one of the things that amazed me is the fact that, the word privilege is bandied around a lot these days. But in Liza's case, it was absolutely a double-edged sword. Because fact, Liza was born on third base. Fact, Liza had this amazing genetic and whatever incredible raw talent. And yet, her journey from third base to home was in many ways harder than for many people rounding the bases, and the reason is the expectations. If you look at footage from that era, I mean, you saw little clips of somebody saying, "How does it feel to be ugly?" That was a bit of it. I mean, you had people constantly asking, "Will you ever sing as well as your mother? You're not going to be able to dance as well. Do you really look like a movie star?" And I mean, for somebody, it's just finding their voice. That's a very, very, it's a black cloud over your head. So I think this idea it's true that for Liza, it was a tough road, which is so hard to say because on some ways, she's a poor little rich girl, massive talent, mother, one of the greatest performers, who ever lived, father, one of the greatest directors, and yet she was able to rise above it and become her own in a very interesting way. And I like to say, I always thought from like a psychoanalysis perspective, it would be very interesting to explore this idea that her mother and father together were responsible in some ways more than anyone for that classic MGM musical that we love so much, the color, the texture, the music. And yet her mother dies, and then the first movie she does after that is a movie that in effect deconstructs the classic MGM musical. I mean, Cabaret, you can't get further from, let's put on a show than whatever. And I've always found that fascinating.
Right. So how is Liza today? What kind of shape is she in?
Well, I think you see it. I mean, she has been, that was shot in 2022 and 2023 mostly, so it's, you know, it's
Yeah,
a year and a half old. And I think that gives you a flavor for what she is. She still smokes like a chimney, you know, wild. In fact, if you look at her laugh over the years, she has that same laugh when she was like 16, and then, you know, it's obviously gotten a little grittier with the smoking, I think, over the years. But she loves people around her who make her laugh, and she's just so sweet. You know, I tell this story at the end of one day's filming. The crew was emptying out, they were loading out, and Liza said, "Have Bruce come back in," you know. I said, okay, so I went back in. Liza was in her bedroom, sitting at the end of her bed, and I had absolutely no idea what this was gonna be about. And she grabbed my hand and she started petting it and looked up at me, you know, with those penetrating eyes and said, "Bruce, whatever you do, don't put in anything phony in the movie. Don't make me look like a phony." And I have to tell you, after years of doing this, when every single subject, famous or not famous, asked the opposite, you know, "Can I see what you did? My hair's out of shape. Don't say that about me," you know, blah, blah, blah. It was unbelievable. I mean, it tells you a lot about her, and I think after years of, you know, it's mentioned in the film, this idea that she was brought up in this MGM system where there were publicists who controlled everything. You know, today, you know, you have, you know, A-list celebrities, you know, posting when they're, you know, "I'm having a Peter Luger steak now and it's good," you know. I mean, everything, they post everything about their life. That was very, very rare back then to see that kind of intimacy, which is why I think the footage is, you know, so eye-opening today, because people didn't allow that. You could not penetrate those publicists back then.
Questions